All right, man. Well, we're on a time crunch today. I want to get through as many questions as possible because in honor of Father's Day, which I'm going to be releasing an episode on Friday specifically regarding fathers, so make sure you're subscribed. But I figured we'd solicit some questions about fatherhood specifically from members of the Foundry and the Facebook group, which just passed 70,000 members, which is unreal. There's a video on our YouTube channel that has almost 2 million views. And I'm like,
I think I know which one it is too.
I'm still blown away by that. I mean, literally at this point, millions of men are being positively impacted by the work we're doing. And that sounds so weird. To me, it sounds like hyperbole. Like, oh, millions of people will be impacted. It's legitimately millions at this point. It's unreal, and it's humbling, to say the least.
And just your poor mom having to hit refresh to get the count up on that.
2 million times.
Yeah. She's a great woman.
It's not only my mom, it's my wife. So they've only done it 1 million times each.
Oh, man.
All right, man. Let's get to the questions as quickly as possible because I know I'm on a time crunch. You're on a time crunch.
Yeah.
I want to get through as many of these as we can.
Sounds good. So these first handful of questions are coming from the Iron Council. To learn more, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. First question, Robert Peterson. How does a man raise a young girl in a world that seems to demean masculinity, showing her and others that masculinity and being a man are not bad things as they would like to try to show it to be?
You just get her around good men. That's you, hopefully. I hope you fit that bill. Potentially her grandfather or grandfathers, siblings, uncles, even men in your circle. And then you show her what being a good, noble, capable, courageous, honorable man looks like. And then depending on her age or her maturity level, you connect the dots. I think this is where a lot of guys fall short. What they'll do is they'll say, well, I'm being a great example. Well, that's good, but sometimes kids don't connect the dots. So it's your
job. Give me an example of that.
Instead of just hoping that through osmosis she learns that Uncle John is a great man, explain to her some stories about Uncle John. Hey, Uncle John served in the military and he did this, and when there was people in his neighborhood who were sick, he brought them food, and that's what great men do. So we connect the dots. We have the experience and the example, and then we have the story, the narration that goes around it. We need
to
both.
Make sure that they're picking up on those examples.
Right, because otherwise they're going to interpret it through their little eyes and their little ears and their little brains, and also their experiences too.
Yeah.
Right, and I hate to say it this way, but let's just say, and this is horrific, but it needs to be said. Let's just say that a young girl has been molested or raped by her uncle. Again, horrific, but let's just assume for a second that's happened. In her mind, if she doesn't deal with this or learn to deal with this through adults in a healthy manner, she might make the connection that because she was molested, that all men are a threat to her. And I would argue that there is a large percentage of women who believe that because they've had a potentially horrific encounter or experience with a man and have equated it to all men behaving that way.
Or even got that story from someone else and they've made that their own, and
exactly.
Who knows? Yeah.
So it's your job to give her the experience, the positive experience, and surround her with men who are going to show her that, and then make the connections so that she learns the right stories, makes those correct calculations so that she can have a healthy perspective of honorable, capable, good men. Same goes for boys, by the way. I mean, this is not exclusive to daughters either. So
I like it. I think one thing that's been really present for me lately, Ryan, is that to make it appealing. You know, it's funny when I think of my ideal day, it's like productivity. I got this done. I did this. I came home, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like being a great dad, husband, man, accomplishing all these things. And then I think about it from my kid's perspective and I look pissed. I look angry. I look like in the zone. And that's just me in the zone. it doesn't look fun. It
Right.
doesn't look enjoyable. It's not pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been really trying to be cautious that my productivity doesn't come across unappealing. The dad's like a boring drone that's always upset and intense, but not enjoyable. Right. And
Right.
so I've been really trying to like be fun, be joyful, be playful, and communicate those things. So then that way they are attracted to wanting to be like me, that my sons want to be like that, because they don't want to be productive for productive sake, right? It needs to be a little bit more appealing. You know, I don't come home and they go, geez, Dad, I want to be like you because you got so much work done today.
Right.
No, they want to be like me
sometimes,
because I'm happy, right? And I'm joyful and fulfilled, right? And I got to make sure that I'm communicating that way of being.
Yes, 100%.
You're going to say something. Sorry.
I think I was just going to say, and sometimes you have to be in the zone, if you will.
Yeah.
So then just explain it. Just explain it. Like this attitude of, oh, because I said so, just because I am. It's not going to fly. It's not productive. It's not healthy.
Yeah.
So instead, hey, bud, I really want to engage with what you're doing. I want to roll with you. I want to wrestle with you. I want to play. I want to, play that game, or I want to spend time with you, go fishing, whatever. I've got to take 30 minutes, and I've really got to dedicate 30 minutes undivided attention on this task. And if I can get this done in 30 minutes and put all of my energy into it without distractions, because this has to be done. These are the priorities we have, and men are about dealing with our priorities. So I got to do this, and then when I'm done, then I'm yours.
Yeah. So
you explain it, and then you follow through, meaning if you said 30 minutes, you got to be done in 30 minutes, and you got to like tune this thing out, this. For those of you who aren't watching the video, the cell phone, right? You got to tune the cell phone out, put it in your pocket, turn it off, keep it at home, and be fully present because you said you were going to be.
Yeah.
So you got to honor the commitment on both sides, the priority of your work and the priority of your child.
I like it. And the lessons being learned there is just awesome, right? It's like, oh, okay. Like that's what you need to do to focus and get something done, and boundaries and all kinds of other lessons.
And you can even say, hey, you know what, bud, I'm going to just leave my cell phone at home because I want to be fully present with you. And sometimes this turns into a distraction.
Yeah. And I
just talk, open your mouth and share.
And I like that because that's connecting the dots even in that little instance is like, hey, just so you know, I'm being fully present.
Exactly.
Right. I'm going to put this away. Like they may not even notice that you put the phone away. So it might benefit you to let them know that you're doing that. Yeah.
Explain. And that's why I was saying earlier is this whole thing. And I think it's an outdated view of like, respect me because I demand it. No, earn it. Even with your children, earn the level of respect and communicate your intentions, communicate what you're doing. This is not only good for you, it's good for them because then they're learning, oh, okay. So when I have a cell phone, and they will, right? My 12-year-old's like, Dad, I really want a cell phone.
Don't do it.
Like, no, of course I'm not. I have no intention of doing that this early. Yeah. But when he does, eventually he will, right? Then I want him to have a healthy relationship with it. If I have an unhealthy relationship with it, and I'm not willing to communicate thoughts and ideas and the way I want to make sure that this is a tool that's used for good, not distraction, I have to have those conversations, and I need to be able to communicate with him what that looks like so that he can have a healthy relationship with it as well.
Yeah, got it. All right. Josh Wickland, I grew up in a family where you always walk away from a fight and turn the other cheek. As I grow up and think more for myself, I see that there are times where you should fight back. How do you teach your kids the proper way to respond to physical altercations, like when to walk away and when to fight back? Good question.
It is a good question. When it matters is
start the fight. Start the fight. Punch first.
Just end it. Don't start it. End it. It's just when it matters. Like that's the answer. I know that's kind of vague and maybe even a little cryptic, but if somebody calls you an asshole, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
And like move on. No big deal. Now, if somebody's threatening me, physical harm, right? If there's a threat of physical harm, that's something that I would say would matter.
Yeah. You need to defend yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
If your child is in an altercation where there's threat of physical harm, that's where they need to defend themselves. Or somebody else, by the way, too. If somebody else is under threat of physical harm, then it may be appropriate that your child steps up and that you explain to them why that's important. So really what you need to be able to do is teach them discernment. Does that matter? Is that relevant? What action should that circumstance elicit, like what is it that I should be doing? How should I respond? Teaching them the differences and distinction between reacting versus responding. Like I look at reaction versus response as the difference between emotional and rational.
Yeah, totally.
Reaction is very emotionally charged. I'm just pissed, and so I'm going to do the first thing that
I'm going to punch him. Yeah,
exactly. Versus a reaction's like, I'm pissed, which is fine. Maybe you should be, but hold on. Like, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish? Oh, I just want to get home to see my family tonight. Cool. Disengage. That's the appropriate reaction in this situation, right? Teach them the difference, the distinction between reaction and response, and then teach them what matters, what is relevant, and what is irrelevant. If somebody calls your son or daughter four eyes, it's going to hurt their feelings, but it's not really relevant in the grand scheme of things. And so physical punch people isn't worth that.
Yeah, now, we don't punch people because you're offended. Yeah.
Right. If a kid calls them four eyes and shoves them, then different. Now you should be able to defend yourself physically, and you should be capable of that. I would also say putting them in some sort of martial arts is valuable because then they can actually learn the real life ramifications of a physical altercation. Because I would, this is just anecdotal, and maybe there's research to back it up, but I would suggest, again, anecdotally, that those who train in martial arts are significantly less likely to get into a physical altercation because they realize the consequences of it. Even if it's just in training, you get your arm yanked on or you get your neck cranked on, that hurts. And potentially death could come from that as well. And if you're training, then you're intimately familiar with the results of that situation. Yeah. Same thing with law enforcement, military. Like I would suggest that these guys don't go looking for fight. They don't want that because they understand life and death situations. So I remember when I was, how old was I? I must have been 12, 13 years old. It was me and a buddy, and we got into a little altercation with a kid, and I got in a fight with him, and he kicked my ass because I didn't know. Like, I didn't know how to fight. I didn't know how to throw a punch. I didn't know how to take a punch, like nothing. Yeah. And I had a bloody nose and a black eye. You know, nothing, not a big deal. Just like a scrap, a schoolyard scrap, right? And I came home, and I knew my mom was going to be disappointed. My future stepfather did what I actually think he should have done. He's like, let me teach you some things. So he handled that really well, I thought. Yeah. And she handled it like a mom would handle it. And then she got me in martial arts. It was Kempo karate, and I did it for like 4 months and hated it. But still, I think that was the appropriate response. So the point I'm making is maybe get them involved in some martial arts, some sort of training that way, so they can feel confident, develop confidence, less likely to get into altercations because they understand the ramifications, and it just develops and builds their level of confidence, and it helps them understand what's relevant and irrelevant in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. And I think that confidence and ego plays a big piece, right? Because it's like, I'm upset, but I'm confident in my ability that I'm not going to, I don't need to like get angry and punch someone. Like a lot of martial arts, certainly jiu-jitsu has a tendency to teach us humility, yes. You know, and eliminates the ego. And so when someone's calling you a name, it's like the combination of those two things. You're like, your ego's not at play, right? You're like, okay, you call me a name, like, so what? But you're also humble, right? And you're like, you know what I mean? It's not worth it. And so it just kind of gets you in the right mindset, I think.
The other thing I found about training is that, like, you never know who could kick your ass.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Like, the dorky guy.
I look at you, this nerd, this like skinny nerd, and I'm like, oh, I could totally take that guy right there. And then you just run circles around me.
I'm a skinny looking nerd. Oh, that sucks. But it's so true. Like, look at 10th Planet guys. I'm totally making a broad judgment here, but 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu guys, all those guys you would, if you saw them on the street, you would assume they're harmless and they're all so dangerous.
I don't know enough about it to say whether that I agree with that or not, but it's there are people who are very deceiving. There's a guy that I train with, Ty Nichols. He's smaller than me. He's not skinny, but he's smaller. He's just more of a like that kind of build, right? He's lean, he's strong, he's lean. Holy cow. I can't even grab this kid. Like, I can't even grab him. Like, I try to grab him, and he's, like, behind me already. I'm like, dude, slow down. Go, like, 80% so I can, like, grab you at least.
Hey, dude, what's flow? I just want to flow, bro. Yeah.
If I grab him, it's over. Funny. But he doesn't let me grab him.
That's funny. Oh, man. So
it's
true.
also not over if I grab him. He's pretty well even if I can wrestle him for a minute.
All right, Nathan Miller, what are your thoughts on child discipline? Do you have any advice on keeping it constructive versus being emotionally charged and reactionary?
Yeah, I mean, he said the word reaction.
I called it out, yeah.
Yeah, it goes back to reaction versus response. And you got to think, okay, what is the point of the discipline? Is it to punish the child? Is it to shame the child? Is it to make them feel bad or guilty? I don't think so. I think the point of discipline, and we're talking about disciplining your children from the perspective of, like there's consequences to your actions, is learning that lesson, that there is consequences to your actions, and we are trying to correct the behavior, nip the behavior in the bud before it compounds and gets worse. So there has to be discipline, because if there isn't, then the child does not learn that there is a corresponding reaction to their behavior, both positive and negative. And it's your job as a father to ensure, and this goes back to our earlier conversation about connecting the dots, that you connect the dots between behavior, consequence. This is also why I don't like participation trophies, because behavior, showing up, kind of doing the bare minimum, and winning, that doesn't go together. You're forming the wrong connections. It's like on the connect the dots books that your kids play. It's like you going from 1 to 10. And then you're like, I don't know what the hell this picture is. Yes, because you didn't connect the right dots. You got to go from 1 to 2. Yeah. Excel, win. Just show up, don't win. Those are the correct connections, right?
Totally. Yeah, you don't say too many things that I take to heart, but you did say something the other day that I thought was pretty profound. I think it was last week. That was a joke, by the way. You said something last week.
You just didn't even stop. I'm like, my brain. I'm like, is he serious?
Well, I was waiting for you to like. You didn't even smile. You're like, what was he saying? Oh, you said something last week, and it's actually stuck with me all week long. And I've been reassessing, what am I trying to get my child to learn? And it's funny because when you said it last week, I don't remember the exact context, but there's so many scenarios where it's like, I want my kid needs to take out the trash, and he needs to do this work, and he needs to, and my focus is what? That he does those things. But I'm not thinking about what I'm trying to get him to learn.
Right.
And I'm missing the entire point. Right. And
it's not to take out the trash. It's to teach them responsibility for having their things.
Exactly. Right. And what I really liked about it, as I thought about it this past week, is it's removing the emotion, and my focus has changed. Where it's not that, oh, my son is doing something wrong and he should do blah, blah, blah. It's, oh, okay, how do I get him to learn that lesson? And it's not about me, right? Because before it's a little bit more about me, like show me respect, take out your trash, clean your room. Yeah, like it was more about that than it was really. And then I pepper it with, this is for your own good, right?
Well, by the way,
versus really focusing on what they're going to learn.
And you're going to garner significantly more respect when you do it in a way that has their best interest at heart.
Yeah.
You know, you're actually, when you're like, I want respect, even if you're subconsciously thinking that and you're basing your response on the respect issue, you're going to undermine yourself. Like your child may do it.
Yeah, but not out of respect.
Not out of respect. Out of fear, maybe, right? Yeah. The ramifications that come with it. You know, this is one of the reasons, and I've thought about this a lot. Like, I don't embarrass my children when they do something they shouldn't. Because the goal is not to embarrass them. Because if you make them feel stupid, here's what I've noticed. If you make them feel stupid, they won't even try it again.
Yeah, totally.
So when my child, one of my children messes up, I'm not going to publicly call them out, because then they're going to be embarrassed. And the dots I'm connecting here is, don't even try that. right? And that's not what it's about. So from the time that my oldest was little, when he would get in trouble, even at grandma and grandpa's house, and I needed to have a conversation with him, I would always pull him aside. Never in front of other people, because my goal was not to embarrass them. It's to teach them the lesson. It's to explain why, and then drive on from there. And I've noticed that talk about respect. I think that communicates a level of respect that you have for your child, and they will respect you for it. Even if they don't voice it, I honestly believe not correcting. Now, there's certain things, if there's some imminent danger or something, where, hey, careful, you can't do that. You know,
don't get in the road. Yeah.
Right. But within reason, like, I don't do it in front of people. I always, hey, son, I need to have a talk with you. Can you come here real quick? We have our 2-minute conversation. All right, let's go back and enjoy ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's safe to say, and Nathan alluded to it, right? We already said that, but he says, being emotionally charged. We already know that, like, at least for me, when I hear that emotionally charged or I'm emotional, it's not about what lesson does my kid need to learn. That is not tied to the emotional charge. No, that is always me. I'm upset. I'm whatever. It's not about my kid at all. Right. It's about me.
Right.
All right, Tim Beck. I have 2 girls, 8 and 11, and I feel I'm too protective and fearful at times and don't let them experience failure or be as adventurous as I should let them be. How do you balance father's instinct to protect while at the same time allowing them the opportunity to grow and experience failure or pain?
Again, what's your motive? What's your goal? My job, and I've said this for years, is to render myself obsolete.
Yeah.
So if I hover and I overprotect and I coddle and I don't let them experience hardship or failure or setbacks or uncomfortable situations, then I'm actually not doing my job. It's the antithesis of my job. They're going to be more reliant upon me, more dependent on me. And then when they get into the real world and things go south, they won't know how to handle themselves because dad always protected them from that. So I think what you've got to do is and look, I get it with daughters. I think he said an 8 and 11-year-old daughter. Yeah. I think naturally, I feel this way about my daughter. I'm significantly more protective of my daughter than my sons. Significantly more. Would you agree with that?
No, I'm the same way. Yeah.
I think all guys are probably like that, which is kind of, I just think, innately hardwired into us. We're protectors, right? We protect the women. So I think it's natural, but I really believe that what you need to do is you just need to evaluate and consider what is your job. And when you think about these things before you get into the heat of the moment, or you get upset, or you want to be protective, or you see something that's scary or uncomfortable for them, if you have the underlying principle already established, then you're more likely to make decisions based on what that principle is. But if you're just winging it, man, it's just not going to work. I was talking with Dave Burke years ago, and I think about this he's a Top Gun fighter pilot, right? And I think about it in the context of that. There's situations and things he can do with a plane because he knows the fundamentals. You can't just jump ahead. You can't just jump from A to Z. You've got to know all of the fundamentals and have those things in place. And that way you can be more creative when you find yourself in a situation that you have to deal with. But you have to know the foundations, the fundamentals. This is why in the book, Sovereignty, The Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Men, I talk about your code of conduct. It's the operating system by which you will operate and work before you get into this heat of the moment. This is the same reason guys will say when they cheat on their wives, oh man, I just lost myself, or, I just got caught up in the moment. Right. Because you didn't establish your rules before the situation happened. Because if one of your rules was that you don't spend time alone with other women, for example, you wouldn't even got yourself into that situation.
Yep.
So you need to establish your rules. And it's the same thing with your kids. If your rule or your job at its most fundamental level is to render yourself obsolete, then you can measure all of your actions against this and ask yourself, is what I'm doing right now allowing them to be fully self-sufficient, contributing members of society, or is it hindering it? And then you measure it back against your rule and then take the correct course of action from there.
Yeah. And I'd like to point out that you're going to feel uncomfortable. Like we alluded to this last week. Like the feeling of like, I got to protect my daughter. Like that's kind of about you, not necessarily about her too. So don't just rely on your instincts thinking, oh, well, that doesn't feel natural. That's no. It's going to feel uncomfortable. I just want to point that out.
Well, I mean, putting yourself out of a job.
Yeah.
And then you add the emotion of love and
my kids don't need me. Yeah, that sounds like a great feeling. Yeah.
I mean, I go to sleep every night thinking, because what I do, one of my things at night is I go around the house, I lock down the house, right? And then I check on each one of my 4 kids. And every time I look at them, I'm like, man, like my oldest, as his feet are hanging over the bed and he's getting huge, I'm like, I'm not doing this for much longer. And that's not, I don't like that. I go to bed every night kind of like sad a little bit in a way, but such is life.
True. It's true. And then you're like, man, I need to keep training. He's getting bigger.
He wears my shoes.
Oh,
his feet are as big. He's 12. Barely. He's barely 12. He wears my same size shoe. He wears my shirts. He steals my shirts out of the drawer. He's a big old hoss.
You better yank him out of jiu-jitsu. You don't want him learning anything else. You're like, no more. You don't need that stuff.
Oh man, he's gonna be a force to be reckoned with.
Oh, I love it. All right, Frank Crates. What is the best way for a man to come along the side of a boy who does not have a father in order to help fulfill that role for him in a way that has the best chance to encourage him and his willingness?
I mean, I don't really know the situation. Of course, it's got to be an appropriate situation, right? So that's one thing you got to be careful, especially in this day and age.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're his uncle or if there's some sort of like leadership capacity, or if this is a family member, or if it's just a neighborhood kid. And it, obviously, the greater distance, the more you really ought to be careful of that and just go through the appropriate channels. Let's just assume it's an appropriate relationship, and you'll have to dictate what that is, because I don't know the situation, the circumstances. I think you just involve him. I just think, you never do anything, not alone, but like you never do anything without explaining your actions. And this goes back to connecting the dots again. Like if me and my son, for example, are doing orders and I'm doing something, I'm not just going to crank it out. I always explain, I'm doing this because X, Y, and Z. Like the other day, I'll give you an example. The other day we had, what happened? Somebody got the wrong shirt. They ordered a shirt and we sent them the wrong style or the wrong size. It was something like that. And I said, okay, well, here's how we respond to this. So we emailed them back and we said, hey, sorry we messed up your order. And I told him, let me go through the email first. So I went, sorry, we messed up your order. Here's what we think it happened. And what we'll do is we're going to send you the right shirt. And why don't you just keep the other shirt? You can either have it or maybe you want to gift it to somebody just as a way to say thank you for your support and sorry we messed up. It was something like that.
Yeah.
And then I explained to him, I said, okay, so let's break this email down. The first thing we did is we said, I am sorry. Not we apologize, not sorry for the inconvenience. I am sorry. What that means is I accept responsibility for screwing up your order. So that's the first step. We always accept responsibility. The second step is we explain, not to make excuses, but just to give some context.
So they understand. Yeah.
Hey, here's what happened. I'm sorry. Here's what happened. Then the third thing we do is we correct it. Right? So we're going to send you a shirt on us. It's on your way. We already sent it off. And then the fourth thing we do is go above and beyond, which means, hey, why don't you just go ahead and keep that shirt for your troubles, gift it to somebody, keep it, whatever you want to do. We really appreciate your support. Thank you. Now, I could have very easily just typed up that message, hit send, and say, it's done, bud. It's all taken care of.
Yeah.
But he would have learned nothing from it. Instead, take a step back. It took me longer. It took me 2 minutes longer to have to explain it. Yeah. And I don't have like a lot of time to spend on it. But again, my job is to render myself obsolete. So I have to explain this to him. So in the context of what this gentleman is asking, if you're working on your car, hey, bud, like come over. I'm replacing the carburetor on my car. I think it'd be cool for you to check out. If you're going to go for a run or go shoot guns or go play basketball or whatever it is you're doing, just involve him, bring him in, loop him into the process. the more you can get him involved. And by the way, these don't have to be like dedicated teaching moments, because there's learning going on when your head's in the car and you're working on a carburetor. There's learning going on outside of how to replace the carburetor.
Yeah.
So again, it's not like dedicated, let me mentor you, let me guide. No, just involve him in what you're involved with, and he will start picking these things up if you're willing to explain them.
Yeah. And then look for those opportunities to connect the dots.
Yes. Yes.
Got it. All right.
Good question so far.
I know the connect the dots theme on today's podcast. All right. Yeah. Bart Foltz, I'm hoping to be a father soon. Congratulations, Bart. Man. Yeah. I know him and his wife have been working on this, and I respect both of you tremendously in the role, in that role in your lives. What words of wisdom can you give me as my wife and I begin this adventure?
Look, everybody's going to tell you, like, oh, just be patient. You're not going to get any sleep, and, take care of her. And all of that stuff's right, by the way. Yeah. Like, that's all accurate. So take that to heart. That's what you're going to get. I'm just telling you, the thing that you won't hear a lot is take care of yourself. Like, don't lose yourself in the work of being a father. Find ways to disengage, find meaningful hobbies and interests and activities and things that you can be engaged in. We were at training the other night, and Jay was there, and he had hurt his shoulder, I think. And so he wasn't training. And after training was over, and I said, hey, like, are you okay? And he's like, yeah, my shoulder's been hurting. I think I'm going to come back in a couple of weeks. And I said, oh, okay. Well, so how come you're here? And he's like, to get away from my family. And he said it kind of jokingly. And then he explained, he's like, no, I just think it's good for me to come here and to be here and be surrounded with you guys. And then also to just disengage from the family stuff so they can do their thing. I can do my thing. So even though I'm not training, it's still a good thing. Like, I thought that was really insightful, because most guys just wouldn't go, right?
Yeah.
Because he couldn't train. But he gets it. He understands it. He understands that he's got to take time for himself, and he does it. And he's probably a better husband and father because he's willing to do that. So that's my bit of advice is don't ditch your friends. Don't lose your hobbies. Find a way to take care of yourself. You're going to be a much more engaged father and husband if you manage to continue to do that.
Yeah. And I'd be intentionality. It's funny. Who was I talking about? I was talking with someone about this idea is like, we have these careers, right? And we're just like, okay, I'm going to get training. I'm going to get coaching. I'm going to go to college or whatever. And then when it comes to parenting, we're kind of like, oh, well, I'll just act on my emotions. And it's like, really? Like, yeah, we wing fatherhood, but we don't wing anything else.
Right.
You don't wing your job. So don't wing fatherhood. So good, be intentional about it. Don't wing it. And to add to your point, Ryan, I think, and it's a little bit tougher, but I think there's some opportunity for you to help your wife not lose herself in becoming a new mom as well, and look for those opportunities to help her do the same. She might feel a little guilty for it, but try.
That's what I was going to say. Because the interesting thing is, as a mother, she's going to pride herself on being fully committed and fully engaged. And anything contrary to that is going to make her feel less than as a mother.
Yeah.
Because she won't be able to see that taking care of yourself is actually a better way to approach it and will make you more capable as a mother. Like, she won't see that. Guys struggle with this too. They feel guilty for taking care of themselves because they can't see that it's actually making you a better husband or father, and it's making her a better wife and mother.
Yeah. And on the flip side, they might generate resentment and frustration and burnout, all while going, that'd be selfish for me. Exactly. It's like, it's good for them. So
it is.
Help her. Good point. All right. Jordan Shink. How do you teach or inspire your sons and daughters to have positive attitude? Many men in my family with whom I work with are plagued with negative attitudes. In my opinion, it is one of the most unattractive qualities anybody can have.
I think you just solicit conversations about the positivity. When we're around the dinner table, for example, one of the things we do is, what was the best part of your day? I don't think we've ever asked, like, what was the worst part of your day?
Yeah, I don't think we've ever done that either.
It's always,
what do you hate most about your life? Yeah.
Right. Like what about you would you like change if you could? No, it's never, it's not that, right? It's always like,
that's
what
funny.
do you like? What do you like best about the day? What are you most proud of?
Yeah.
You know, and then when they have situations where, oh, I hate taking out the trash, just tell them, hey, flip that around. If you didn't have to take out the trash, what would that mean? Well, it means you wouldn't have any trash. Okay, good. So what does our trash consist of? Toy wrappers, boxes from Amazon, food scraps, like all things that are nice that we get to enjoy, that we have the luxury of enjoying.
Yeah, the trash is a representation of all the greatness that we have. Yeah.
Exactly. So we should be grateful. And again, connect the dots, right? So flip it. When somebody says something negative, say, well, oh, I don't like her because of this. Well, what's one thing you actually respect about that person? Like, what if you challenged your kid to that? Oh, the little Johnny at school is such a jerk because of blah, blah, blah. Really? Yeah. Well, that sounds like a jerk for sure. But what's one thing you actually really respect about him? Like, just ask that and get him to think about, oh, well, I guess he's really good at soccer. Well, that's cool. You know, and then talk about that instead. So you can flip these scripts if you're willing to do it and you're willing to have the conversations and just invest and pour a little time into them. You can flip these scripts and talk about it. And I don't think it's that difficult. You just condition it.
I think for Jordan, obviously, maybe not applicable, but for some of those guys that our default behavior seems to be negative. Tom Bilyeu had a great quote the other day, and it was something around using a habit loop to connect positive thought. And the suggestion was every single time you have a negative thought, like literally at that moment, like pause and do exactly what you're doing, but do it in your own mind for yourself.
Right.
You know, because that's kind of a given to this, right? It's like you can suggest to your kid all you want, but if you're running around super negative all the time around your children, that's not going to help either. Right. So
of course,
you obviously need to be in a positive state. And I like that idea of almost kind of a hijacking the habit loop to inject my own positive thoughts every single time I have a negative one. I was like, oh, I kind of like that.
So I learned this lesson. I'm going to sound like a total jerk, but I learned this lesson when I was probably 11 years old. I remember I was at an assembly. I don't know why I remember this story.
Defining moment.
It must have been, but there was this girl who got up. I'm sounding like such an asshole. And my initial thought was, whoa, she is really ugly. Like that was what was in my head. I was like, oh, she is ugly.
Yeah.
And then she sat down and she started playing the piano. And I was like, holy cow. Like, I mean, she was 11 or 12 years old. I'm like, that was beautiful. Like that was amazing. And it just dawned on me. It's like every time you can choose what you see, right? I chose to see that she was unattractive. And you know, maybe that was right, you know, but that's what I focused on.
Yeah.
And I didn't even give her the benefit of the doubt of assuming that maybe there was some other things that were actually really beautiful about her. And I found that out in that moment. I'm glad I learned that lesson quickly. But yeah, for every person that has some sort of negative, I had this friend and he was a jerk, man. He was so like, at least I thought he was when I first met him. I'm like, man, I don't like this guy. I do not like this guy. And he was arrogant and he was pompous. He was just kind of a jerk. And then he was a neighbor and I went through some rough times. I won't get into all the specifics, but I went through some rough times. He was the only one that was there. The only one that was there for me in those rough times. And that's the guy I thought who was a jerk and he was arrogant and he was full of shit.
Had
and
more
he was
loyalty.
The only one that was there. So you can see what you choose to focus on and you'll find it.
Totally.
If you want to find something wrong with Kip, you and me, that's pretty easy to do, right? But you can find it. Or you can choose to focus on, hey, you know, here's some things that we like about what they're doing. And you can do that with any individual, any circumstance, any moment, whatever it may. I had Wes
argument.
Watson. Any argument. I had Wes Watson. He spent 10 years in the state penitentiary. He found meaning and purpose, and I wouldn't say beauty necessarily. I don't think he'd use that word, but he found value in it. And he transformed his life in the most, I can't even imagine. He was in solitary confinement for months and months. Some of the most horrific circumstances that he found himself in, and found is not the right word, put himself into. And he found purpose, meaning, significance, and goodness there, and then has now translated it over to his life and has made an incredible life for himself and his wife and his son and millions of people.
Yeah. To just add one additional thought to this whole thing, we have a tendency to pigeonhole people as a fixed way of being. And I think that also, let's say, we are dealing with someone and they are a jerk. Like, I've tried to spin it, Ryan, and this guy's just horrible. But there's also growth. We believe in progress, right? We believe a person can change, right? And that in itself gives us hope to realize that people might be in that place in their life, right? They may be just on the wrong path right now, right? But the path isn't over. They're not in a box. Although our tendency is to put people in boxes, like growth is possible, right? And sometimes it's just the compassion of letting them grow and letting them work through whatever they need to work with gives us hope, and maybe see them as maybe their potential, not so much, the current state of being. And I just a powerful way, I think, at least for me to see people when I struggle with negative thoughts about people. Yeah,
there was a quote, I can't remember it, but it was something along the lines of seeing people not how they are, but not who they are, but who they could be. It was something along those lines.
Yeah, which was how we see our kids.
Yeah.
Right?
And hopefully ourselves
parents
too.
do.
That's what hope is.
Yeah.
And without hope, life would be miserable.
Yeah. If you don't believe in progress and hope, what is there? Yeah.
If you don't believe that tomorrow will be better than today, at some level, tomorrow has, not that it's guaranteed, but that tomorrow there's a potential that it would be better than today, then you wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. So we know you have hope because you got out of bed.
Yeah.
It might be buried, it might be covered, it might be hard to see, but somewhere inside of you, there is some hope. Otherwise you wouldn't.
Yeah, totally. This might be a good last question for us. I'll let you decide. Last question within the Iron Council. Dennis Morris, a riff off your signature question. He says, what does it mean to be a father?
Well, I don't have it as defined, I would say, as the protector, provider, presider, but I think I allude to it when I say your job is to raise self-sufficient adults. That's the job of a father, which, by the way, it doesn't have to be biological. There's fathering that can take place in your community, and it should. When I coach young men in baseball or football, I feel that I'm in a fatherhood role. I'm not their dad. I'm not saying I'm their dad, but there's fathering going on because I'm raising self-sufficient adults. Not kids. I'm not raising kids. Understand the distinction.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You're not raising children. You're raising adults. They just happen to be children right now. So your job has to be on the long term of, hey, in 20 years, is this going to be a functioning, contributing, self-sufficient, self-sustaining adult? If not, then you're not doing your job. So that means that there's a whole host of virtues and skill sets and capabilities that I need to grow and expand and develop, like love and empathy and kindness and compassion and structure and discipline and guidance and patience and perseverance and grit and everything that is taking me to the end of raising self-sufficient adults. That's what it means to be a father.
Cool. All right, we good wrap up there? Or do you want to try to squeeze in a couple
maybe
more?
take one or two more if we can.
All right, let me jump over to the Facebook.
Let's take one more. Let's take one more.
One more. Jeez, one guy from Facebook gets his question answered.
Just look in there real quick and say, boom, that's a good question.
Okay, hold on. Sorry.
And then be prepared next week too, if you would.
I like the Goggins video. See how I deflected there? No, the Goggins video the snippet from your interview with him that went up on Facebook. That was good.
No, that was good. But what does that have to do with being prepared? I'm just kidding.
No, I had already told you I'm deflecting.
No, that was a good video. It was a good moment. It's a great conversation with him.
Yeah. Dude, he's such a stud, man. Goggins. Oh, come on.
It was funny. My wife and I were talking about it. She's like, that interview was like an hour and a half or something. She's like, I think it probably would have been half that if he didn't use the F word every other word.
It would have been like shortened.
45-minute. It was actually a 45-minute interview. It just took us an hour and a half.
Because all the filler words.
That's right.
Or filler word.
Yes, word.
Oh my gosh. He is funny. Like, I don't know why, but that stuff like just makes me laugh. You know what I mean? Because it seems so extreme to like be dropping the F-bomb all the time. Maybe I should.
It is a military. I think it is a military. It's a military. It's a rough man's language, right? So if you're in the military or blue collar, like contract, construction, any of the trades, it seems to me that it's like a rough man's language. I'm not saying it's bad necessarily. I'm just saying, because it's funny, because I've been around blue collar, I've been in the military, and so when they talk, people who aren't exposed to it are like, oh my gosh. I'm like, wait, what? Did he swear? Like you can't even hear it.
All right, I think I might find one here.
All right, well now we ran out of time here.
This is a good one. We'll cover the. Well, I don't know. All right, Rich Olson. Divorced father who has been very active in my 17 and 20-year-olds' daughters' lives. What would you suggest to keep showing them and teaching them as they start their lives? So, I mean, he has the context of divorce, but I don't think that changes, right? Like our kids are 18,
out of the house, whether they're
out of the house. How do we continue this influence?
Yeah, I don't know necessarily. I'm not in that situation, but I don't think it's all that different than what you're potentially doing right now. You just be engaged to the degree that you can. You be involved in their life. You ask questions. You call. If you come across something that you think might be valuable or help them, you invite them to be part of your life. I just don't think this is a real complicated situation. And unless there's some extenuating circumstances that maybe he's overcoming, I just think you be involved. Like, that's it. Just be involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Would you add anything into that?
No, I'm trying to look at my examples, right? My family were not a good example of this, but my wife's family, they are. And every Sunday, ever since we've been married, her grandma, and it was her grandma that did it. Her grandma was like, there's family dinner, my house or somewhere every Sunday, period. Right. And she has now since passed, but that was a priority. It was important to her. Her kids knew that was important, and it has perpetuated even after her leaving this earth. So I just think those things, right? Whether it's family traditions around the holidays or whatever, I think that it requires intentionality as a parent, because your kids they're going to do what we all did. You're going to get to college, you're going to get married, you're going to get busy. You're going to be juggling things, and making that family or the bigger family unit a priority is going to be naturally kind of tough. And I think you just need to make it a priority and be intentional. And I think that will kind of solidify itself. Like I'm thinking, like some fathers do like a father and son, like all the boys and the dad do like a fish trip to Alaska. I've heard of fathers doing that with their sons, post, living at home. And I'm like, I love that idea. It's awesome. Like a guy's trip every year or whatever. So,
right.
There you go.
Cool. All right, let's wrap it up.
All that for that question. All right.
No, it's valuable. You still want to be involved as a father, and so I think it's valuable. I'm not there. I just think you be involved to the degree that you can. But I do like your idea of like, take some initiative. Put something together and invite your daughters. I think it was daughters, 17 and 20 or something. Yeah. Yeah,
daughters.
Invite them to be.
All right. So join us on future AMAs by submitting your questions to Facebook. You can join us in the 70,000 other men at facebook.com/group/Order of Man. And of course, you can learn more about the exclusive brotherhood, the Iron Council at orderofman.com/Iron Council. 2 quick events. September 3rd through the 6th is Legacy. This is father and son, ages 8 to 15 years old. learn more about Legacy, that is orderofman.com/legacy. And then the Order of Man main event, October 9th through the 11th. And for Iron Council members, there's a get together the night before on the 8th.
Yep.
To learn more about that event, go to orderofman.com/main event, main as the state. Subscribe, podcast, check us out on YouTube. Get your planners. They're restocked inside the store.
By the way, on the planners note, I just finished the battle planner for kids.
Nice.
Which is awesome. I've got my son, my oldest son is doing it right now, and he's got a friend who's doing it as well. So they're kind of beta testing it for us.
Copy.
But that should be available here in the coming, I would say, month-ish or so.
I love it. Yeah, that's great.
It's going to be sweet. Yeah.
And then follow Mr. Mickler on Twitter or Instagram at Ryan Mickler. Should we pull out just Origin Immersion Jiu-Jitsu Camp? I don't have the dates handy, but that's coming in, I think, August, September.
Yeah, end of August, I think.
End of August. If you guys are going, register and let us know. So then that way we can make sure that we're aware that you're there so we can get some rolls in. And Ryan likes to beat up on Order of Man men.
It goes the other way around, typically. All right, cool. All right, guys, we'll let you get going. I think we've got another interview lined up for Thursday. We've been doing 2 over the past several weeks, so we'll keep that up for the next little while at least. And then we'll be back on Friday. But yeah, that's it. Until then, go out there, take action, become the man you are meant to be.